William had always been the kind of man who believed in routine. Every morning at 7 sharp, he would kiss Kate goodbye and head to his job at the insurance company. Every evening at 6, he would return home to find dinner waiting, and his wife's warm smile greeting him at the door. Their marriage of 12 years had settled into a comfortable rhythm, like a well-rehearsed dance they both knew by heart. That Tuesday started like any other. William left for work carrying his usual briefcase and thermos of coffee, waving to Kate as she tended to their small garden. The day at the office dragged on with endless paperwork and client meetings. By 5:30, he was already thinking about Kate's homemade lasagna and the evening news they would watch together on the couch. But fate had different plans. Just as William was packing up his desk, his boss approached with an apologetic expression. The Henderson account needed immediate attention, and William was the only one who could handle it. What should have been a quick review turned into 2 hours of intense work. By the time he finally left the office, the sun was setting and he was running nearly 3 hours late. William tried calling Kate several times during the drive home, but her phone went straight to voicemail. This struck him as odd because Kate always answered his calls, especially when he was running late. A small knot of worry began to form in his stomach, though he pushed it aside. She was probably in the shower or had fallen asleep watching her evening soap operas. The familiar tree-lined street looked different in the twilight. The streetlights cast long shadows across the pavement, and most of the neighbors had already drawn their curtains for the night. William pulled into their driveway and noticed that Kate's car was still there, which provided some relief. At least she was home safe. As he approached the front door, William fumbled with his keys in the dim porch light. The house seemed unusually quiet. Usually he could hear the television or Kate moving around in the kitchen. Tonight, there was only silence. He called out as he inserted the key into the lock, announcing his arrival as he had done thousands of times before. The door swung open and William stepped into the hallway, expecting to see Kate rushing toward him with her usual mixture of relief and mild annoyance about his late arrival. Instead, the house remained silent. The living room was empty, the television dark. Even stranger, Kate's purse and keys were sitting on the hall table, exactly where she always left them. William called out again, his voice echoing through the empty rooms. Something was wrong. Kate never went anywhere without telling him, especially not without her purse. He checked the kitchen, finding the ingredients for dinner still sitting on the counter as if she had been interrupted in the middle of preparation. His heart began to race as he climbed the stairs 2 at a time. The bedroom was empty, the bed still made from that morning. The bathroom showed no signs of recent use. It was as if Kate had simply vanished into thin air. Panic starting to set in, William searched every room in the house twice. He checked the basement, the garage, even the small storage room they rarely used. Kate was nowhere to be found. Her clothes were still in the closet, her jewelry still in its box on the dresser. Nothing seemed to be missing except Kate herself. Just as William was reaching for his phone to call the police, he heard a sound that made his blood freeze. It was coming from behind a door he had completely forgotten about, the door to the small room under the stairs that they used for storage. The sound was faint but unmistakable. Someone was crying. With trembling hands, William approached the storage room door. It was slightly ajar, which was unusual because they always kept it locked. The crying grew louder as he got closer, and now he could tell it was definitely Kate's voice. But why would she be hiding in there? And why did she sound so terrified? William's mind raced with possibilities, none of them good. Had someone broken into their house? Was Kate being held against her will? His protective instincts kicked in, and he prepared to throw open the door and rescue his wife from whatever danger she was facing. But as his hand touched the doorknob, Kate's crying suddenly stopped. The silence that followed was even more unsettling than the tears had been. William held his breath, listening intently. Then he heard Kate's voice, barely a whisper, saying something that chilled him to the bone. "Please don't let him find us." William's hand froze on the doorknob as Kate's whispered words echoed in his mind. "Please don't let him find us." The word "us" hit him like a physical blow. Who was with Kate in that tiny storage room? And who was this him? She was so afraid. Taking a deep breath, William gently pushed the door open. What he saw inside made his heart stop. Kate was crouched in the far corner of the small room, her arms wrapped protectively around a young boy who couldn't have been more than 8 years old. Both of them looked up at him with tear-streaked faces, terror evident in their eyes. The boy had Kate's green eyes and her delicate nose. William's mind struggled to process what he was seeing. This child looked remarkably like Kate, but that was impossible. They had been trying to have children for years with no success, and Kate had never mentioned having any family members. Kate? William's voice came out as barely a whisper. Who is this? Kate's face crumpled as fresh tears began to flow. She pulled the boy closer to her, as if trying to shield him from the world. William, I'm so sorry. I wanted to tell you so, many times, but I was terrified of losing you. The boy looked between William and Kate with confusion and fear. He was small for his age, with clothes that looked worn but clean. His dark hair was tousled, and he clutched a small backpack as if it contained everything he owned in the world. Tell me what? William asked, though part of him already suspected the answer. Kate took a shuddering breath before speaking. This is Danny. He's my son. The words hung in the air between them like a bomb waiting to explode. William felt his legs give way, and he sank to his knees in the doorway. Kate had a son, a child she had hidden from him for their entire marriage. I was 17 when I had him, Kate continued, her voice breaking. My parents made me give him up for adoption. They said I was too young, that it would ruin my future. I thought I would never see him again. William stared at the boy, at Danny, trying to process this earth-shattering revelation. But why is he here now? Kate wiped her eyes with the back of her hand, still keeping one arm protectively around Danny. The adoption fell through when he was 5. The family decided they couldn't handle him anymore. He's been in foster care ever since, moving from home to home. Danny spoke for the first time, his voice small and scared. The social worker said I might have to go to another new family tomorrow. I don't want to go again. William's heart broke a little at the fear in the child's voice. He had seen that same expression in Kate's eyes sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking. A deep, buried pain that she tried to hide behind her smiles. I've been visiting him secretly for the past 6 months, Kate admitted. I tracked him down through the adoption agency. I told them I was his aunt. I couldn't bear the thought of him being alone, bouncing from family to family, never knowing where he belonged. The pieces began falling into place for William. Kate's unexplained absences, the mysterious phone calls she would take in the other room, the way she had been acting distant and preoccupied lately. She hadn't been having an affair or hiding some terrible secret about their marriage. She had been trying to reconnect with the child she had been forced to give up. Today was supposed to be just a visit, Kate continued, but when I got to his foster home, no one was there. Danny was sitting on the front steps with his backpack, crying. The neighbors said his foster family had packed up and moved out in the middle of the night, leaving him behind. William felt anger rise in his chest. What kind of people would abandon a child like that? I couldn't just leave him there, Kate said, her voice growing stronger. I brought him here because I didn't know what else to do. But then I realized how this would look to you and I panicked. I've been hiding in here with him, trying to figure out how to explain everything. Danny looked up at William with those familiar green eyes. Are you going to send me away too? He asked quietly. The question pierced William's heart. This innocent child had been rejected and abandoned so many times in his short life. No wonder Kate had been desperate to protect him. William looked at his wife, seeing her clearly for perhaps the first time in months. The woman he had married was generous and loving, with a fierce protective instinct that he had always admired. Of course, she would risk everything to help a child in need, especially her own child. Kate, he said softly, why didn't you trust me enough to tell me the truth? More tears spilled down Kate's cheeks. Because I was afraid you would leave me. I know how much you want children of our own, and I thought if you knew I had given one up, you would think I was a terrible person. And then when I started visiting Danny, I was afraid you would think I was betraying our marriage. William moved closer to them, no longer caring about the cramped space of the storage room. "Kate, I could never think you were terrible. And helping a child in need isn't betraying anyone." He looked down at Danny, who was watching this exchange with wide eyes. The boy had been through so much trauma in his young life, yet there was still hope in his expression, as if he dared to believe that maybe, finally, someone would choose to keep him. "What happens now?" William asked, though he was already beginning to know the answer in his heart. William extended his hand toward Danny, who hesitated for a moment before taking it. The boy's fingers were cold and small, trembling slightly as William helped him to his feet. Kate stood up as well, brushing dust off her clothes and wiping her eyes. "Let's go to the kitchen," William said gently. "I bet you're hungry, Danny." The three of them made their way through the house in silence. Danny stayed close to Kate, his backpack clutched tightly against his chest. His eyes darted around nervously, taking in the comfortable living room and family photos on the walls. William noticed him staring at a wedding picture of him and Kate, confusion written across his young face. In the kitchen, William opened the refrigerator and began pulling out ingredients. "How about some grilled cheese sandwiches and tomato?" "Soup?" he asked Danny. "It's one of my specialties." Danny nodded shyly, settling into one of the kitchen chairs while Kate sat beside him. As William cooked, Kate began talking to Danny in soft, soothing tones, asking about his day and whether he was hurt or scared. The normalcy of the domestic scene felt surreal given the circumstances. While the sandwiches cooked, William studied the boy more closely. Beyond the physical resemblance to Kate, Danny had a quiet intelligence in his eyes and a way of observing everything around him. Despite his obvious fear and exhaustion, he was polite and well-mannered, saying please and thank you without being prompted. "Danny," William said as he placed a plate in front of the boy, "can you tell me what happened at your foster home today?" Danny looked at Kate uncertainly before answering. "Mr. and Mrs. Peterson said they were going on vacation, but then I heard them talking about how they couldn't handle me anymore. When I woke up this morning, all their stuff was gone, and there was a note on the refrigerator saying they had moved away." William's jaw tightened. He couldn't imagine the cruelty of abandoning a child like that. "How long had you been living with them?" 4 months, Danny replied, taking small bites of his sandwich. "Before that, I lived with the Johnsons for 8 months, and before that, the Garcias for 6 months. Kate reached over and smoothed Danny's hair. "That's too much moving around for anyone, especially someone your age." As they ate, Danny began to relax slightly. He told them about school, his favorite subjects, and how he loved to read but rarely got to keep any books when he moved between families. William found himself genuinely interested in what the boy had to say, and he could see Kate's face lighting up with maternal pride at Danny's intelligence and thoughtfulness. After dinner, William suggested they watch a movie together. Danny's eyes widened with surprise and delight. Apparently, family movie nights weren't common in his foster homes. They settled on the couch together, with Danny between William and Kate, a bowl of popcorn balanced on his lap. Halfway through the movie, Danny fell asleep, his head resting against Kate's shoulder. William watched as Kate gently stroked the boy's hair, her face soft with love and protectiveness. This was the side of Kate he had fallen in love with, her capacity for kindness and her instinct to nurture others. "We need to talk," William whispered, careful not to wake Danny. Kate nodded, and they carefully moved Danny to the guest bedroom, where Kate tucked him in with surprising expertise. William realized she must have done this during her secret visits. This maternal behavior came so naturally to her. Back in their own bedroom, Kate and William sat on the edge of their bed, facing each other. The events of the evening had left them both emotionally drained, but William knew they needed to have an honest conversation about what came next. "Tell me everything," William said. From the beginning. Kate took a deep breath and began to share the story she had kept locked inside for so long. She told him about her teenage pregnancy, the shame and fear she had felt, and the pressure from her parents to give up the baby. She described the agony of holding Danny for just a few minutes after his birth before the nurses took him away to his adoptive family. "I tried to forget," she said, tears flowing freely now. I threw myself into school, into work, into building a life with you. But there wasn't a day that went by when I didn't think about him, wondering if he was happy, if he was loved, if he remembered me at all. William listened without judgment, his heart breaking for the pain Kate had carried alone for so many years. He began to understand why she had been so eager to try for children of their own, and why each negative pregnancy test had seemed to devastate her more than it should have. 6 months ago, I couldn't stand it anymore. Kate continued. I hired a private investigator to find him. When I learned he was in foster care, that his adoption had failed, I knew I had to do something. I couldn't let my child grow up feeling unwanted and unloved. She told William about her visits to Danny, how she had pretended to be his aunt to gain access to him. She described the boy's initial wariness, followed by his gradual trust and affection. She had been slowly building a relationship with him, hoping to eventually find the courage to tell William the truth, and perhaps explore legal options for custody. I was going to tell you, she insisted. I was just waiting for the right time, the right words. I was so afraid of losing you, William. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and I couldn't bear the thought that this secret might destroy our marriage. William reached for Kate's hands, holding them gently. Kate, I need you to understand something. Yes, I'm hurt that you felt you couldn't trust me with this, but I'm not angry about Danny. How could I be? He's an innocent child who needs help, and he's a part of you. Kate looked up at him with hopeful but uncertain eyes. What are you saying? William stood up and walked to the window, looking out at the quiet neighborhood street. He thought about the boy sleeping in their guest room, alone and frightened with nowhere else to go. He thought about Kate's secret pain and her desperate love for a child she had never stopped missing. I'm saying that we can't let him go back into the system, William said finally. Not after what he's been through. We have to find a way to keep him safe. The next morning brought harsh reality crashing down on their hopeful plans. William had barely finished his first cup of coffee when the doorbell rang. Through the front window, he could see a stern-looking woman in a business suit standing on their porch, carrying a briefcase and checking her watch impatiently. Kate appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale with worry. That must be Ms. Rodriguez from Child Services, Danny's caseworker. I called her last night and told her Danny was safe with us, but she insisted on coming over first thing this morning. William opened the door to find exactly what he had expected. A tired, overworked social worker who had probably seen every excuse and sob story imaginable. Ms. Rodriguez was in her 50s, with graying hair pulled back in a tight bun, and her expression suggested she had little patience for complicated situations. Mr. Thompson, I'm here about Daniel Martinez. I understand he spent the night here without proper authorization. William invited her in, trying to project calm confidence despite the anxiety churning in his stomach. Kate came downstairs to join them, and they all settled in the living room. Danny remained upstairs, but William could hear him moving around in the guest bedroom. Mrs. Thompson, Ms. Rodriguez said, consulting her files, you've been visiting Daniel regularly for several months, claiming to be his aunt. However, our records show no family connections. Would you care to explain? Kate's hands trembled as she clasped them in her lap. Ms. Rodriguez, I need to tell you the truth. Danny is my biological son. I gave him up for adoption when I was 17. But I am his birth mother. The social worker's eyebrows shot up and she began scribbling notes furiously. Do you have documentation to support this claim? Birth certificate? Adoption papers? Anything that proves this relationship? I have some papers at home in my safe, Kate replied. I kept copies of everything from when he was born. Ms. Rodriguez leaned back in her chair, studying them both carefully. Even if you can prove biological relationship, Mrs. Thompson, that doesn't give you any legal rights to this child. You relinquished those rights 18 years ago when you signed the adoption papers. Daniel is a ward of the state, and unauthorized removal of a child in state custody is a serious offense. William felt his temper flare. With all due respect, Ms. Rodriguez, this child was abandoned by his foster family. Kate found him sitting alone on a doorstep with nowhere to go. What was she supposed to do, leave him there? She was supposed to call our emergency hotline immediately, Ms. Rodriguez. replied curtly. We have procedures for these situations. Emergency placement families, temporary shelters, there are proper channels. Kate spoke up, her voice growing stronger. Those proper channels have failed Danny over and over again. He's been in 7 different foster homes in 3 years. He's been rejected, abandoned, and treated like he's disposable. How is that in his best interest? The social worker sighed, and for a moment her professional facade cracked slightly. Mrs. Thompson, I understand your concerns, and believe me, Danny's case has been challenging. He's a good kid, but he's been through trauma that makes him difficult to place. Many families can't handle children with his history. What history? William asked, though he dreaded the answer. Ms. Rodriguez glanced toward the stairs, then lowered her voice. Danny was physically abused by his first adoptive father when he was 5. That's why the adoption was dissolved. Since then, he's struggled with trust issues, nightmares, and behavioral problems. He's been to counseling, but progress has been slow. The revelation hit William like a punch to the gut. That sweet, polite little boy upstairs had been hurt by the very people who were supposed to protect him. No wonder he seemed so wary, so quick to flinch when adults moved too suddenly. What kind of behavioral problems? Kate asked quietly. Nothing violent or dangerous, Ms. Rodriguez assured them quickly. But he has difficulty forming attachments. He's been known to withdraw emotionally, refuse to participate in family activities, and sometimes he runs away when he feels overwhelmed. 3 of his foster families returned him because they said he was too difficult to connect with. William and Kate exchanged glances. They hadn't seen any of these behaviors during Danny's short stay with them, but then again, it had only been 1 night. Ms. Rodriguez, William said carefully, what would it take for us to become approved as Danny's foster family? The social worker looked surprised by the question. You're serious about this? You understand that fostering a child with Danny's history would be extremely challenging? We're serious, Kate said firmly. This is my son. I know I don't have legal rights to him anymore, but that doesn't change the fact that I love him and want to give him a stable home. Ms. Rodriguez pulled out a thick packet of papers from her briefcase. The process is extensive. Background checks, financial verification, home inspections, interviews with references, parenting classes, and specialized training for dealing with children who have experienced trauma. It typically takes 3 to 6 months to complete. What happens to Danny in the meantime? William asked. He'll need to be placed in a temporary foster home or group facility while your application is processed. Kate's face crumpled. You're going to take him away again, after he's finally found someplace he feels safe? Mrs. Thompson, I don't have a choice. The law has already failed this child multiple times, William interrupted. Surely there's some way to expedite the process or allow him to stay here while we complete the requirements. Ms. Rodriguez was quiet for a long moment, studying her paperwork. When she looked up, William could see the conflict in her eyes. There might be one option: emergency placement with relatives while the formal process is completed. If you can prove biological relationship and we can fast-track the initial safety checks, I might be able to authorize temporary custody pending full approval. Kate sat up straighter. What would that require? Immediate DNA testing to confirm parentage, emergency background checks that can be completed within 48 hours, and a preliminary home inspection. Plus, you'd need to sign agreements to begin the formal training process immediately and submit to regular check-ins from our department. William and Kate looked at each other, both knowing this was their only chance to keep Danny with them. We'll do whatever it takes, William said. At that moment, they heard soft footsteps on the stairs. Danny appeared in the doorway, still wearing the clothes from yesterday, his hair messy from sleep. He looked at the social worker with obvious fear, then at Kate with desperate hope. Are you taking me away again? He asked quietly. Ms. Rodriguez's professional mask slipped entirely as she saw the terror in the child's eyes. She had probably witnessed this scene hundreds of times, a scared child being moved from one temporary situation to another, never knowing where he truly belonged. Danny, Kate said gently, come here, sweetheart. The boy ran to Kate and buried his face against her shoulder. William watched as something fundamental shifted in Ms. Rodriguez's expression. Perhaps she was remembering why she had gotten into social work in the first place, not to shuffle paperwork and follow procedures, but to help children find safe, loving homes. The DNA test results came back 2 days later, confirming what everyone already knew in their hearts. Kate was indeed Danny's biological mother. Ms. Rodriguez expedited the emergency background checks, and by the end of the week, Danny was officially placed in their temporary custody while they completed the formal foster care approval process. But having legal permission to keep Danny was just the beginning of their challenges. The first few weeks were a roller coaster of small victories and heartbreaking setbacks as they learned to navigate life as an instant family. Danny's trauma responses became apparent almost immediately. He hoarded food in his backpack, convinced that meals might disappear without warning. He would wake up screaming from nightmares about being abandoned again. Loud noises made him flinch, and he would freeze up completely whenever William or Kate raised their voices, even if they were just calling to him from another room. The most difficult aspect was Danny's emotional walls. During the day, he was polite and cooperative, almost unnaturally well-behaved, but William and Kate could see the careful distance he maintained, as if he were constantly preparing for the moment when they would decide they didn't want him anymore. "He's protecting himself," explained Dr. Sarah Chen, the child psychologist Ms. Rodriguez had recommended. "Danny has learned that getting attached to people leads to pain. His behavior is a survival mechanism." William struggled with feelings of inadequacy as he watched Kate's natural maternal instincts in action. She seemed to know intuitively when Danny needed space and when he needed comfort. She could read his moods and fears in ways that William was still learning. One evening, about 3 weeks after Danny had come to live with them, William found the boy sitting alone in the backyard staring at the stars. Danny had been particularly quiet that day, and William was worried something was wrong. "Mind if I join you?" William asked, settling onto the grass beside Danny. The boy shrugged, which William had learned was Danny's way of saying yes without committing to actually wanting company. They sat in comfortable silence for several minutes before Danny spoke. "My real dad used to hit me." The simple statement hung in the night air between them. William felt his chest tighten with anger toward a man he had never met, someone who had hurt this innocent child. "I'm sorry that happened to you," William said quietly. "That was wrong, and it wasn't your fault." Danny picked at the grass beside him. "All the other dads after that were okay, I guess. But they didn't really want me. They were just doing it. For the money or because their wives made them." William's heart broke a little more. "Danny, can I tell you something? Kate and I aren't doing this for money. We're doing this because we want you here, because you belong with us." Danny looked at him with those familiar green eyes, full of longing and skepticism. "But what if I'm too much trouble? What if I do? Something wrong? Then we'll work through it together," William said firmly. "That's what families do. They stick together even when things get tough." "But you didn't sign up for this," Danny said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Kate is my real mom, but you didn't choose to have me." William was quiet for a long moment, choosing his words carefully. This conversation felt like one of the most important of his life. "You know what, Danny? You're right. I didn't choose you at first. But I'm choosing you now. Every single day, I wake up and choose to be your dad, and I'll keep choosing you no matter what." Something shifted in Danny's expression. For the first time since he had come to live with them, William saw a crack in the boy's emotional armor. Meanwhile, Kate was navigating her own complex emotions. The guilt she felt about giving Danny up as a baby was overwhelming at times. She found herself trying to make up for 18 years of missed bedtime stories and scraped knees all at once. "You don't have to be a perfect mother right away," Dr. Chen reminded her during one of their family counseling sessions. "Danny needs consistency and patience more than he needs you to fix everything that went wrong in his past." Slowly, almost imperceptibly, things began to improve. Danny started leaving his backpack in his room instead of carrying it everywhere. He began asking for seconds at dinner instead of hoarding food. The nightmares became less frequent, though they didn't disappear entirely. The breakthrough came 6 weeks into their new life together. William was working late in his home office when he heard Kate crying in the kitchen. He found her sitting at the table, surrounded by papers and forms from the foster care agency. "What's wrong?" he asked, sitting beside her. "I can't do this," Kate sobbed. "The parenting classes, the home inspections, the constant evaluations. I feel like I'm being judged every single day on whether I'm worthy to be Danny's mother. And what if I'm not? What if I mess this up like I messed up 18 years ago?" Before William could respond, they heard a small voice from the doorway. "Kate, are you okay?" Danny stood there in his pajamas, his hair tousled from sleep. He had obviously been awakened by Kate's crying and had come downstairs to check on her. Kate quickly wiped her eyes, trying to compose herself. "I'm fine, sweetie. Just having a tough day with some paperwork." But Danny wasn't fooled. He walked over to Kate and, for the first time since he had come to live with them, initiated physical contact. He wrapped his small arms around her shoulders and hugged her tightly. "It's okay to cry sometimes," he said softly. "I cry too, but you don't have to worry about me leaving. I want to stay here with you and William. This feels like home." Kate's tears flowed harder, but now they were tears of joy mixed with relief. William felt his own eyes well up as he watched his wife and the boy who was becoming their son comfort each other. In that moment, William realized they had turned a corner. They weren't just three people living in the same house anymore. They were becoming a real family, with all the messy, complicated, beautiful dynamics that entailed. The formal foster care approval process continued, with its endless paperwork and evaluations. But now they faced it as a united team, determined to give Danny the stable, loving home he had been searching for his entire life. 8 months after that life-changing evening when William opened the storage room door, he found himself standing in a courtroom, wearing his best suit and holding Kate's hand tightly. Danny sat between them, fidgeting nervously with his tie, the first tie he had ever owned, purchased specifically for this momentous day. The adoption hearing had been scheduled for a Tuesday morning in early spring. Judge Patricia Hawkins, a kind-faced woman in her 60s, had reviewed their case thoroughly and was now ready to make their family legal and permanent. "Daniel Martinez," Judge Hawkins said gently, "do you understand what adoption means?" Danny stood up straight, just as William had taught him. "Yes, Your Honor. It means that William and Kate will be my real parents forever, and nobody can take me away from them anymore." The judge smiled. "That's exactly right. And is this what you want?" "More than anything," Danny replied, his voice steady despite his nervousness. Judge Hawkins looked at Kate and William. "And you both understand that adoption gives you all the rights and responsibilities of biological parents? That this is a permanent commitment?" "We do, Your Honor," they said in unison. The judge signed the papers with a flourish. "Congratulations, Thompson family. Danny, you now have the same legal status as if you had been born to William and Kate. Your new name, if you choose to use it, is Daniel Thompson." The courtroom erupted in quiet celebration. Ms. Rodriguez, who had become an unexpected ally over the months, was there with tears in her eyes. Dr. Chen sat in the back, beaming with pride at how far they had all come. Even Kate's parents, who had initially been resistant to the idea of their daughter reconnecting with the child they had forced her to give up, were there to support their new grandson. After the hearing, they celebrated with dinner at Danny's favorite restaurant. As they sat around the table, sharing stories and laughing together, William marveled at how natural it all felt now. Danny had grown 3 inches in the past 8 months and had gained weight, his face filling out with the security of knowing he would always have enough to eat. The behavioral issues that had made him so difficult to place in foster care had gradually disappeared as his sense of safety grew. The nightmares still came occasionally, but they were manageable now. Danny had learned to trust that William and Kate would be there when he woke up scared, that they wouldn't disappear in the middle of the night like so many adults in his life had done. School had become Danny's refuge. His teachers reported that he was an excellent student, eager to learn and surprisingly mature for his age. He had made friends slowly but steadily, and for the first time in his life, he could invite them over to his house without worrying about having to explain why he might not be there next week. The most profound change was in Danny's relationship with William. What had started as cautious politeness had blossomed into genuine father-son affection. William had never expected to become a father this way, but he discovered that love didn't require biology. It just required showing up. Day after day with patience and consistency, Danny had started calling him Dad about 4 months into their journey together. It happened naturally during a weekend fishing trip when Danny got excited about catching his first bass. "Dad, Dad, look at this one," he had shouted, and William's heart had nearly exploded with joy. Kate had cried happy tears when William told her about it later. Now, as they sat in the restaurant celebrating the adoption, William watched Danny animatedly telling Kate's parents about his science project. The boy who had once been afraid to speak above a whisper was now confident enough to command the attention of the entire table. "You know," Kate whispered to William as they watched Danny interact with his new grandparents, "I used to think that giving him up was the biggest mistake of my life, but now I wonder if everything happened exactly the way it was supposed to." William squeezed her hand. "What do you mean?" "If I had kept him when I was 17, I would have been a scared, unprepared teenager with no support system. I might have made a mess of raising him. Instead, he came to us when we were mature enough to handle his needs, when we had the resources and stability to give him everything he deserves." Kate paused, watching Danny laugh at something his grandfather had said. "And you and we needed him too. We just didn't know it. He didn't just complete our family, he taught us what family really means." William nodded, understanding exactly what she meant. Their marriage had always been strong, but Danny had added a dimension to their love that neither of them had anticipated. They had learned to work as a team in ways they never had before, supporting each other through the challenges of instant parenthood and celebrating together the small victories that marked Danny's healing. That night, after they had returned home and Danny had gone to bed, William and Kate sat on their back porch looking up at the same stars Danny had been gazing at months earlier during their heart-to-heart conversation. "Do you ever wonder what would have happened if you hadn't worked late that night?" Kate asked. "If you had come home at your usual time?" William considered the question. "I think somehow, some way, we would have found our way to Danny eventually. Maybe not that exact night, but eventually. Some things are just meant to be." Kate smiled and leaned against his shoulder. "I love that you believe that." "I have to believe it," William replied, "because the alternative, that we might have missed out on having Danny in our lives, is too terrible to imagine." As if summoned by their conversation, they heard Danny's bedroom door creak open upstairs. A moment later, he appeared on the porch in his pajamas, rubbing his eyes sleepily. "I couldn't sleep," he said. "Too excited, I guess." Kate opened her arms and Danny climbed onto the porch swing between his parents. William wrapped a blanket around all three of them as they swayed gently in the cool night air. "Are you happy, Danny?" Kate asked softly. Danny was quiet for a moment, and William could practically hear him thinking. Finally, he spoke. "I used to think that happiness was something that happened to other people, like in the movies or in books. I thought some people were just lucky enough to have families that loved them, and other people like me had to figure out how to be okay on their own." He snuggled closer to Kate. "But now I know that happiness isn't something that just happens. It's something you build together. And we built this, didn't we? The three of us?" William felt tears prick his eyes. "Yes, we did, son. We built this together." "I have one more question," Danny said, his voice getting drowsy. "That night when you found me and Mom in the storage room, were you scared?" William thought about that terrifying moment when he had heard Kate crying behind the door, not knowing what he would find. "I was terrified," he admitted. "But not for the reasons you might think. I was scared that something had happened to your mom. I was scared that she was in danger or hurt. But when you saw me there, were you scared of me?" "No, Danny. I was never scared of you. I was confused and surprised and worried about what would happen next. But I wasn't scared of you. You were just a little boy who needed help. Danny yawned. Good. Because I was really scared of you at first. I thought you would be angry and send me away. Never, William said firmly. We're stuck with each other now, kiddo. For better or worse, through good times and challenging times, we're a family. Danny drifted off to sleep between them on the porch swing. William and Kate sat in comfortable silence, watching the stars and listening to their son's peaceful breathing. The journey that had brought them together had been painful and complicated, full of secrets and fears and bureaucratic hurdles. But sitting there with their family complete at last, William knew that every difficult moment had been worth it. When he had opened that storage room door 8 months ago, he had discovered more than just Kate's hidden secret. He had discovered a son he never knew he was missing, and a deeper love than he had ever imagined possible. The scared little boy who had whispered, "Please don't let him find us," was now sleeping peacefully in his father's arms, finally home where he belonged. And William Thompson, who had always believed in the power of routine and predictability, had learned that sometimes the most beautiful things in life come from the moments when everything changes in an instant. When love walks through an unexpected door and transforms everything forever.